a slave master's mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, whether it be McNair in Houston or Richardson with Carolina, he was forced to sell the team or decided to sell the team. We kind of see that with a lot of the owners. Jerry Jones has been caught saying kind of crazy things as well. I don't think it's just John Gruden, but I've never been a big fan of John Gruden, and I'm not piling on today. I
Yeah.
think he's a wildly overrated coach. I never really liked him as a broadcaster. I kind of put him into the same vein as Tony Romo, where there's just a lot of nonsense and a lot of style over substance. Like I don't learn much from John Gruden when he was doing the games on Monday Night Football. I don't think he's that good a coach. He stepped into a great situation in Tampa, and then after that, they never contended again. So, look, it's just weird though because it's coming from the Raiders, who are the most progressive organization in the NFL. They were under Al Davis. They remain that way under Mark Davis. This is an organization that was at the forefront of being progressive and being
Yeah, they're
inclusive,
pioneers.
right?
Pioneers, and
Pioneers.
in every sense of the word,
Every
not
step.
racial,
Yep.
not just
No.
racial, but for
Women.
for
Yeah.
obviously Hispanics
Exactly.
with Tom Flores. So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. You do the eye test podcast with Clark Judge, and you've had former Raiders on. I mean, they
Including
speak
Flores
glowingly, including Tom
and
Flores,
Amy
who
Trask.
deservedly. Yeah, exactly. And Flores speaks glowingly, I'm sure, of Al Davis. He probably wasn't the easiest guy to work for, but he was way ahead of his time. I mean, Art Shell, the first black head coach in NFL history. I mean, Al Davis was way ahead of his time. Al Davis was very close to Red Auerbach, and Red Auerbach was that guy in the NBA. The three organizations you look at in professional sports that were just miles ahead of everyone: the Raiders in football, the Celtics in basketball, and the Dodgers in baseball. They just were much more progressive. And again, when you use the word progressive, the people on the right get all offended. But that's what it was. They were looking for progress, and that's what those three organizations were there. So here's John Gruden, who is mostly associated with the Raiders, even though he won the Super Bowl in Tampa. Actually being anything but that.
Yeah, and it's a shame. And then you think and you look at, and I know people have brought it up already, the Carl Nassib situation.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, some of the things that he was saying, it's like, I mean, if you're Carl Nassib, the first, openly gay player in the NFL, like, what are you thinking? Like, how do you look at that guy in the locker room and say, yeah, you may put on the show, you may sit there and say you regret your decision, all that, but in the back of your mind, these are the thoughts that go through this guy's mind, and he's supposed to be your coach. He's supposed to be the guy. So, whether he was going to be fired, I mean, I would assume he was going to be fired if he didn't resign. He was obviously saw the writing on the wall and got ahead of this and turned in his resignation. Um, Again, I would like to believe that the Raiders were going to make the decision if Gruden didn't make it himself.
Right.
Just again, based on everything that you've brought up in terms of their history and their, um, you can hate the Raiders all you want, but you cannot deny what they've done to for inclusion in this sport. I mean, it I mean, talk about a team that's lapped every other team. Forget about the Rooney Rule. Forget about all this. I mean, the Raiders were the team that really made the difference in this league, and just to have this be the coach of I mean, again, it was always a joke when he came back and got the job for 10 years. It was, okay, how long is he actually going to last? And there was a myriad of reasons why you would think he wouldn't make it to the 10 years. I don't think any of us had this on our quote unquote bingo card a few years ago to say, hey, this is what's going to happen. But here we are. And if you were going to ask at the beginning of the season who I thought the first coach to be fired would be, I'd probably put my money on like Matt Nagy, maybe Joe Judge. Certainly not John Gruden, because I felt like he was almost bulletproof with that contract. So no matter what happened, so at the end of the day, this happened very quickly, but it just goes to show, like, don't be prejudiced. I mean, it's as simple as that, folks. Like, I mean, I love all the jokes out there. People talking about like, oh, everyone's going back trying to delete their emails. First of all, don't delete them, okay?
Yeah, no.
They're
They last
there.
forever.
Second, if you feel the need to have to go back and delete emails, well, guess what? You probably deserve to get called out anyways. So, like,
Mhm.
look, I mean, the way you act in private, obviously speaks more about your character and who you are as a person. And if your motivation, I guess, if your reasonings for, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is like if you're hiding things that people are always like I've seen a bunch of people tweet out, okay, you better start deleting those. Well, why? Why? Why delete them? It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change what you said. You're just trying not to get caught. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, if you have emails similar to that you've sent on a workplace email or whatever, in the context of which John Gruden sent it, and guess what? You probably deserve to get found out at some point because you probably still harbor some of those feelings. So, again, it's a messy situation. The Raiders, I think, should come out of this, fairly clean. Again, because I don't think this is a John Gruden issue, as far as we know,
Mhm.
not a Raiders issue. Um, ESPN though, they seem to be skirting a little bit because let's not forget these quote unquote emails and these interactions occurred while he was
Right.
employed by the organization. So pretty wild occurrence yesterday. Made a lot of people kind of not realize what was going on during the football game last night because it was pretty fun, pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, the game was outstanding. We saw Lamar Jackson just do incredible things out there and lead his team to victory in overtime. And yet,
Oh, well, it seems like we have lost John, and by losing John, that means my phone died, which was not the actual John. So give us just a minute. We'll get him back here while we try to continue the show here. Obviously, last night it wasn't just the NFL going on. Obviously, the Ravens and Lamar Jackson really showed up. Personally, I was watching part of the game. I saw that the Colts were up a decent amount, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll tune in later. Kind of forgot. Woke up this morning, had to rewatch all the highlights because I clearly didn't know anything that was going on because, well, hey, guess what? I was paying attention to baseball and a lot of the things that um, were going on in the NFL with John Gruden, as John and I were starting to discuss here. So, the biggest thing for the Ravens now, if you look at the landscape of the AFC, they've already beaten the Chiefs. The Chiefs right now are out of the playoff picture. So for them, they may be looking more so at a wild card at this point because they've lost to the Chargers, they've lost to the Ravens, and they will continue to um, have to climb out of this hole that they dug themselves in the AFC, and it doesn't get too much easier, save for maybe a matchup with the Washington football team this week. But the Ravens now have kind of the inside track when it comes to, certainly the AFC North. I think they're a better team than Pittsburgh. Certainly, they certainly have a better quarterback. I mean, you're going to find a pretty short list of quarterbacks that are better than Lamar Jackson right now. I don't have the stat in front of me, but someone posted this morning that posted the total yards for Lamar Jackson, and he's outgaining several teams, not just players, teams in total yards. Between his passing and running ability, it's pretty wild, and he seems to be gaining more and more of that MVP like form that he had just a couple years ago, where he was really the most dominant player on the field and was named the second unanimous MVP in NFL history. So um, the AFC seems to be a lot more competitive than we initially anticipated. I think going into the season, the question was, okay, what team can really compete with the Chiefs? Well, the answer is a lot of teams because the Chiefs aren't what we know them as. They are a team that is not good defensively, and they're not as great offensively. And I think that some of those struggles can be fixed for sure. 15 games left in the season, or whatever it is, or 14, 13 games. Um, you fix those issues, you become a little bit more efficient on offense, and you can help a lot of those issues that you have on defense. However, however, the problem is already at this point, this early in the season, you're a little too far behind almost for trying to make it up and get that number one seed. Now, remember, there's only one team that gets the bye week this year, and I think that's going to play a big role in how these playoffs shake out because if Kansas City has to go to Buffalo, or say they have to go to the Ravens, Baltimore, that's not going to be easy. They're going to want that home field advantage. They're going to want that first round bye week if they want to get back to their third Super Bowl. And I don't know if that can necessarily happen. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The game, like I said, is this going to be Lamar Jackson moving forward? Well, if it is, well, he's going to be right in the thick of the MVP race. So give us just a moment. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. And when we get back, hopefully we'll have John Sapichetti on the line.
On an 0-1 pitch. Hernandez. It's on the left center field. It is pulled in by Meadows. Here comes Santana. The Red Sox under the defense.
All right, folks, we're back. We're back. Sorry about that little mishap. We lost John there for a moment, but it's okay. It's all right. Oh, I guess we're getting to hear it again. There we go. We got to stop that on replay. No, we had a little disconnect issue here with John, but we got John back. John, pulse check, you there? You still with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good,
I'm here.
Good. I had to carry the show there for a few minutes.
That's okay. You're quite capable.
Well, I tried. It was a little nerve-wracking. I was talking about the Ravens and kind of their high, where they stand in the AFC. But look, one of the most impressive things from Lamar Jackson, kind of what I was speaking to, total yards, more than several teams, which is just absurd. But we'll get back to that. Although, John, I know you said you watched both baseball. How conflicted would you be if the Red Sox and the Giants were World Series? I know. There's
very easy.
Yeah, Giants over everything, right?
Oh God, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I figured. That's what I figured. But
yeah,
look, I mean, it's pretty.
And it would be the best organization of the 21st century because the Red Sox have 4 World Series, the Giants have 3. So if they meet in the World Series and the Giants win, they'll both have 4, and they have the tiebreaker because they would have beaten them head to head. And neither team has lost in the World Series in this century. In fact, they generally just handle the World Series magnificently. Alex Cora now is 15-4 in the postseason.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
That's wild. That's wild.
That's really good. And I would definitely Giants over Red Sox. It would be a blast. I mean, talking about 2 great organizations, franchises, fan bases. That would be a wonderful World Series. That's what I'm hoping for.
Well, it's funny because it's like, look, I'm old enough. You're obviously old enough to remember when. Obviously. Old enough to remember, the Yankees dominating. Not just the division, but just the AL in general. I mean, it's the Yankees, and it's funny how much that script has flipped over the last 15 years. It wasn't that long ago. It was the lovable losers. Oh well, maybe next year. This year's the year. This is where some of the Boston media thrived in the downtrodden years of the Boston Red Sox. But the reality of it is the team. Obviously very overshadowed by the Patriots' success, but like you said, they have 4 World Series. They're 4 wins away, and look, it's going to be an easy matchup. But they just knocked off 2 of the best teams in the playoffs, and the Yankees and the Rays. And you know what? Are you really going to bet against them at this point? They seem to have a little bit of luck on their side. They have they're obviously playing to a level that is warrants going to a World Series. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and perhaps another. And the Red Sox are pretty good at this. Unexpected World Series run. It would make 3, I think, if they were to make it there. Because you think about 2013, how unexpected that was. With everything that happened. They that whole season, they didn't lose a single series. Third. That's insane, really, if you think about it.
Yeah,
and
they were outstanding.
Yeah, but no one expected that sort of dominance, and they just walked to a World Series. That was an example of a team that was from day one the very best team in the league, and just it showed. And in 2018, sort of, there's higher expectations, obviously, but still, I don't think anyone expected them to make that run. And here we are yet again, a couple years later. That's what it feels like. 4 wins away from going back to the World Series, so that's pretty exciting if you're a Red Sox fan. And if you're a little tired of Tampa Bay's success, you may have enjoyed this as well. Although again, the alternative being Boston potentially has more success, so maybe it was a lose-lose situation for a lot of people out there.
Well, you guys still have Tom Brady down there, so he's taking care of a lot of things.
Don't include. Look, I'm a Tom Brady fan. I'm not a Buccaneers fan. Just by virtue of him being on the Buccaneers, I will root for the Buccaneers.
That's why next year I got a funny feeling it might be a Cleveland Browns fan or something like that wherever Aaron Rodgers is playing. But yeah, it was a wonderful game because they got off to this 5-0 lead. I know we were texting back and forth going, "This is fun," and then all of a sudden it was 5-5. And you're like, "This isn't fun anymore." This is how the Red Sox play. I mean, they play a lot of crazy games. They have back-to-back walk-offs. The other thing is, really no one has mentioned this, the fly ball to Austin Meadows, was he aware that it was the bottom of the ninth inning and there was a runner at third? Because he was so nonchalant setting up for that fly ball. Like, the outfielder has to back up a couple of steps and get some momentum on his throws.
Yeah.
He just was flat-footed, caught it, just like flung it in, and it wasn't that deep a throw. It's probably 250 feet. I mean, if he had backed up and caught it with momentum going forward, he would have made a much better throw. Maybe he would have had a play at the plate. I mean,
he could have just been resigned to the fact that he wasn't going to make the play. That's
Man.
not a. Yeah, look, it is what it is. Look, at first I thought the ball was hit a little bit deeper. Regardless, a fly ball is going to score a guy from third base. Especially,
right.
They brought in what's his face to run. So
Santana,
yeah, thank you.
Santana to pinch run.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's going to be a tough throw to make. I did think it got hit a little bit further when it fell down. I was like, oh wow, that could be play. But
yeah,
the reality of it was, I don't know. That would have, obviously if he was coming from second, it's a whole different story. Or even if he got a great jump off second and was just rounding third, I think you make you have a far better chance. But just tagging from third, and I don't know. Maybe he was just there was no way for him to even take those extra steps to wind up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
it might have not been high enough because it may have just been a routine fly ball, whereas we've seen a lot in this series with these sky high fly balls. And Hernandez was either smart or fortunate hitting into left field, because if you hit it to Kiermaier, who's just wonderful in center field, my lord, what a ball player that guy is, or Rosarena in right field, then there would be some play at the plate because those two guys can really throw the ball. Meadows, not so much. But look, anyway, the Red Sox found a way to win. Give him credit. Eduardo Rodriguez was really good as a starter last night. They came up with the big hits when they had to early, and then they kind of went asleep offensively. But I'm not really a Red Sox fan, but I root for them. It'd be my favorite team in the American League, and I always am bewildered by some of the fan base, some of the media. Maybe it's just the people that call talk shows, that there's like so much hatred towards the Red Sox. I think it all goes back to ownership, because they're outsiders, and this is the most parochial place on earth, right? I mean, so John Henry and Tom Warner are considered outsiders, and they are a bit, sanctimonious, or whatever a word to describe them, or they can be insufferable at times. But since he bought the team, they've won 4 World Series, as you talked about, and Fenway Park went from being a dump to the biggest tourist attraction in Boston. Like, I mean, give them credit for some of that stuff, right?
Well, I think also the biggest issue, speaking to that, what you're bringing up, is that the leaders of the media coverage of this team want this team to fail, and are overly negative and condescending to a lot of their readers and a lot of their listeners. And look, I feel comfortable saying that.
Speaking about Dan Shaughnessy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
He's made a lot of money.
Of course.
It's a great narrative.
And it is a great narrative. But the problem is, at a certain point, that stick just runs dry. Like, people don't get this mistaken with people always wanting to hear great things about your team. No, I think people appreciate honest, realistic criticisms and concerns when discussing, the ebbs and flows, especially of a baseball season, because there's so many. But the predictable, narrative-driven opinion that leans negative and leans towards "I'm smarter than you, you listen to me" type writing is what I think has soured a lot of people on this team. And unfortunately, look, we're plugged in because we pay attention to this 24/7. The guy who listens to sports talk radio for 45 minutes a day when he gets out of work isn't. So what does he do? He turns his radio on, and they hear, "Oh, well, Dan Shaughnessy, he said this, and the fans are this, that." Well, guess what? Dan Shaughnessy, he's been in this industry for a while. I'm going to trust him, and it's a snowball effect. So you do that for so many years. It's the same thing over. It's so exhausting, John. It really is. It's the same thing over and over and over again. How many columns were written a couple months ago about Chaim Bloom and how he should be? It's like, wait a minute. they just hired this guy who, if you look at the Rays, by all the things, by all accounts, an incredibly run organization to be able to do what they've done, considering their payroll. You're not going to give this guy an opportunity to build this team. I mean, look, I was one of the first people to sit there and be disappointed about the Mookie Betts trade. Not anymore. I mean, why would you complain about that? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I was, but it was interesting last night as we were seeing what the Tampa Bay Rays got for Chris Archer,
Yeah.
which was Austin Meadows, Tyler Glasnow, and also the young pitcher pitch game two, Baz, who I think is going to be a really good starter. They got three legitimate
Yeah,
players.
but they also had a
For
desperate
Chris Archer.
Pittsburgh. They also had a desperate
Yeah.
Pittsburgh team who thought that they were just on the cusp of
Right.
competing.
Yeah, so they
So
went out and
you're
got
not,
a
yeah,
legitimate
you're,
starter. The Red Sox kind of mopped up the Mookie Betts trade. And look, I like Alex Verdugo a lot. He's nowhere near the player Mookie Betts is.
No,
No one
no,
would
no.
say that. He's a nice player, though, and he kind of fits in here, right? He and Kiki Hernandez, they bring a really good DNA to the organization because they played for the Dodgers and went to the playoffs every freaking year. So they're considered winners, right? I mean, like Kiki Hernandez is always in the postseason doing something. They kind of blew it, though, because they should have got an arm out of that deal. But we don't have to relitigate that. They've moved on. I mean, this is what happens. I mean, they weren't going to pay him that type of money. So yeah, it hurts me because he's the best player I've ever seen wear a Red Sox uniform, and I'm 58 years old. In terms of all around ability, I mean, maybe Manny Ramirez was a better hitter or whoever, but all around, defense, running, hitting, everything. Mookie Betts is the best player I've ever seen wear a Red Sox uniform. So you want to see him play his entire career with the Red Sox. It just didn't happen. So they tried to get the most they could. They probably should have kept the pitchers that they got in the original field, Glatterall or whatever his name is. He's a legitimate arm. Like, they need that in the bullpen rather than Connor Wong, who's the best backup catcher, and Peter Downs looks like a complete myth. So basically it's Alex Verdugo or Mookie Betts, which is never a good deal. But here they are. They'll go into the American League Championship Series.
And look, I mean, that's sometimes moves just had to be made, and that's a move that obviously I think when he took a job, Bloom, that is, he knew he had to make that move. That wasn't.
Oh yeah.
It was so. That's why I don't. I don't. In hindsight, again, a lot of this is in hindsight because you go back and look at some of the things I said. I was very disappointed in the move. I thought it was I wasn't killing Bloom, but at the same time, I was disappointed that it got to this point. And I think probably in thinking back at some of the things I said, I think it was more directed towards ownership than anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But just based on what we've seen so far, it certainly seems to be working out. And look, the team again expected to do so little, and that's what kind of goes back to the media coverage in this team on this, because the expectations were so low prior to the season that, like, by the time we got to the end of the season, it was almost disappointing where they finished. And it was like, wait a minute, how do we get from okay, the expectations are far less than what we actually did, but what we actually did ultimately was disappointing to this gang of media members that just feels the need to push this negative narrative. But,
and who's voiced that quite loudly in the city has been Lou Merlone, who's on your side with this. And I think what Lou did a couple weeks ago, I see where he's at. I don't think the entire sports hub is out to get the Red Sox. I mean, but it's what you do on talk radio, especially if you're doing 5 hours at night.
Well, their business model isn't accurate. That's the problem. It's not accuracy. It's not facts. It's narrative. Right. It's all about narrative. And yes, I understand that. I mean, look, I gotta knock your guy Shannon Sharp a little bit here. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it.
I saw that on Twitter.
But like, it's narrative-driven conversation has just overtaken the sports world, and it's unfortunate because a lot of these narratives are based on nothing. I mean, they're rooted in further false narratives. So, I said, I'm going to bring up Shannon Sharp yesterday. Look, we all get what they do. One guy picks one side, one picks the other. It's for a show. It can be entertaining. But at a certain point, you just got to sit back and realize that some of the things coming out of your mouth are just dumb and hurt this industry and this credibility of what we're trying to do accomplish. And that's, provide a a reasonable voice for fans out there because, yeah, I think there is value to sports talk. It's just not what it is now. So, Shannon Sharp will get up there with a straight face, mind you, on national television and give Tom Brady a C plus for his performance in which he threw over 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. They just whitewashed the Dolphins. His reasoning was because he was padding his stats. He was padding his stats in a one-score game entering the fourth quarter, in which he got taken out with over 9 minutes left in the entire game. He was padding his stats. Like, come on. Like, that's not even like, again, in the context of understanding what they're trying to do and what they're accomplishing as a show, it's just idiotic. And it
Of
bugs
course,
me
yeah,
because
no,
this isn't,
that's not even
yeah,
worth discussing. You're right because I mean, again, if you're opposite Skip Bayless in the conversation is Tom Brady, unless you want to just sit there and nod at Skip, you have to kind of come up with some crazy stuff, and that certainly is
but
crazy stuff. I mean,
that's
Brady may
that's
be
the
the
problem.
NFC Offensive Player of the Week, and you can't give him a C plus because unless there was just a dearth of scoring this week, the guy put up 45 points in 51 minutes. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and it's just it's funny because it's like, it's predictable. And that's what I'm saying. It's like it's same with this Boston media stuff. It's like it's predictable. Like, like you'll see a link, you'll see a headline, you'll be like, "Oh, I know who wrote that." You click the link, bingo, nailed it. Because
Oh,
you know
sure,
why?
yeah,
You
yeah.
know exactly what it is. It's like the whole tomato cans thing with the Patriots every single year. Oh, tomato cans, tomato cans. That's my thing. That's my narrative. So I'm just gonna keep pushing it because I'm cool and edgy. I don't know.
I actually did research on this. I did research on this, Ian, and I broke down from 2001 on until Brady left. They basically won like 75% of any situation you want to talk
Yeah,
about. I mean,
yeah.
'cause I think only twice in the Brady Belichick run did they sweep the division. Like
Yeah,
there was always a tough game in Miami, or the Jets had some good defenses, and I was just like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, while they were together, won 77% of their games, whether it was in the regular season, the postseason, against the AFC East, against the NFC West. Like just pick anything over that period of time. It wasn't like they went 6-0 every year against the AFC East and then went 5-5 the rest of the way against the rest of the league. I mean, yeah, those teams actually, if you took out the games against the Patriots, were all roughly 500 teams. It's just that the Patriots dominated the division, kind of like Green Bay's dominated the division.
Well,
And people will throw that out there and go, it's the Aaron Rodgers division. Well, yeah, he's really good. They're better run than the other organizations. So, congratulations.
Well, and look, if you go through and the research has been done, the records that are put out there, you list all the records for the divisions, whether you have the Patriots in it or you remove all the winners of the division, the corresponding teams to the Patriots, the AFC East is at worst middle of the pack winning. And in a lot of cases, they're right at the very top. So this whole idea that the AFC East was this horrible bottom feeding division is false, and it's provable. I mean, the raw data right there. This isn't subjective. This isn't me saying, "Oh no, I actually think they're pretty good." No, I mean the data says so, but people will still sit there and push this narrative, and it's like it's mind-boggling because you know what it is. All they do is focus on the quarterback, ignoring the fact that a guy named Mark Sanchez did technically go to 2 AFC Championship games, but what they do is they ignore the defense. I mean, remember the early 2000 Dolphin defenses? Good God, were they good?
Jason Taylor was kryptonite to Tom Brady.
Jason Taylor,
I would think
Thomas. I mean, you just name it down the line. They had an incredible.
One's a Hall of Famer, one's probably a borderline Hall of Famer, right? And then they had was it Patrick Surtain?
Patrick Surtain,
the cornerback that was.
And they were top 10 defenses every year. And then you get into the middle part or the later part of the 2000s into the early 2010s. And guess what? The New York Jets had one of the best defenses in the entire league. Forget about their offense. But and then the Buffalo Bills came around. So this whole idea that this AFC East has been this just wash of a division is silly, and it's a false narrative, and it's just things that I know we're kind of getting off on a tangent. We're going to have to wrap it up.
No, it's just, I mean, there are certain numbers that back up what we're saying. So again, I remember this narrative. I think it was around 2014. Then I did it every year. I'm like, the guy wins. Both of them win 77. Well, when they're together, 77% of their games. Super Bowls, AFC Championship games, like whatever. Monday night, Thursday night,
it doesn't
Saturday
matter.
afternoon.
Indoor, outdoor.
Not when it's
on a chair, off a chair.
Yeah, it's not Drew Brees who numbers in the dome are much better than outside of the zone. Like we've seen that, and Peyton Manning to a lesser extent, and that's why I always put our two guys up there because they had to play their careers in inclement weather quite a bit. I mean,
Mhm.
Green
And
Bay and
thrive.
Foxborough aren't exactly the best places to play in terms of weather. So yeah, and they're both Northern California guys. I don't know how they were able to be so good at inclement weather, other than they're both really good. In fact, the best inclement weather running back ever was O.J. Simpson, who also grew up in the Bay Area. Maybe they just make good athletes in the Bay Area.
Yeah, maybe. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. We still got a whole long season to go in the NFL.
Yeah,
Obviously, have plenty of time to go in Major League Baseball, and hockey and basketball are just getting started. So we're going to say goodbye for the day. We will be back on Friday to give our picks for this weekend's game. So until then, have a great week, and we will talk to you